Hi everyone, and thanks for joining. Today I'm going through this hands-on lab detecting EC2 threats with Amazon GuardDuty, available on QA platform previously known as Cloud Academy. So I'll read the description of this lab, then start the lab. Amazon GuardDuty continuously monitors and identifies threats by analyzing several types of activity in your AWS account and any invited member accounts that you link to. GuardDuty can notify you of a wide variety of threats, including unauthorized access, Trojans, communication with Tor anonymizing, or cryptocurrency networks. In this lab, you will learn how to use Amazon GuardDuty to automatically uncover malicious EC2 activity and configure threat lists to improve the security of an AWS lab environment. Learning objectives. Upon completion of this lab, you will be able to enable, disable, and suspend Amazon GuardDuty for AWS accounts, activate threat lists and trusted IP lists, and understand when to use each. Understand the types of security findings GuardDuty can detect. Prioritize and interpret GuardDuty findings in a live environment. Prerequisites. You should be familiar with core AWS services, particularly EC2, VPC, and S3. The following courses can be used to fulfill the prerequisite: Compute Fundamentals for AWS and Introduction to Amazon S3. Let's check that out. And let's check out these screenshots for environment before and environment after. Let's start the lab now. So as usual, I'll skip this first lab step, explaining that we'll be using Sandbox AWS accounts with credentials available in the left-hand panel. While our cloud environment is spinning up, I'll read through this step too. Enabling Amazon GuardDuty. Amazon GuardDuty continuously monitors and identifies threats by analyzing several types of activity in your AWS account and any invited member accounts that you link. GuardDuty uses the following data sources to make its threat findings: VPC flow logs, AWS CloudTrail event logs, and DNS logs. To start using GuardDuty, you must first enable it for your account. You will enable GuardDuty in this lab step. For this lab, you will enable GuardDuty in a single AWS region. In practice, it is highly recommended that you enable GuardDuty in all supported AWS regions. This allows GuardDuty to generate findings of threats even in regions that you are not actively using. Instructions. In the upper right corner of the AWS Management Console, click Oregon to open the region drop-down menu and click US East, Ohio, US East 2 to change the region. Your student user only has permission to use GuardDuty in the Ohio region. In the AWS Management Console search bar, enter GuardDuty and click the GuardDuty result under Services. So we'll be using US East, not US West, as shown in the left-hand panel. In the AWS Management Console search bar, enter GuardDuty and click the GuardDuty result under Services. Click Get Started on the Welcome page. Click Enable GuardDuty to have GuardDuty start monitoring your AWS environment. Enabling GuardDuty automatically creates a service-linked role to allow GuardDuty to gather metadata About EC2 instances in your environment. After you enable GuardDuty, it immediately begins pulling and analyzing streams of data from AWS CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs to generate security findings. This all happens automatically behind the scenes. For example, you do not need to create VPC flow logs to have GuardDuty monitor network activity in your VPCs. Summary: in this lab step, you enabled Amazon GuardDuty so that security findings for your AWS environment can automatically be discovered. And we have one validation check here. Check if GuardDuty has been enabled. Let's test it out. It fails. So we see our bridge is still loading, but we can at least log into our cloud account, and let's see if we can enable GuardDuty in the Ohio region. Let's verify. Too high, yes. So we'll need to switch from Oregon to Ohio. Do we have GuardDuty bookmarked already? Looks not. Let's access it from here then. So we can enable all features or only GuardDuty malware protection for S3. So we'll enable all features. Let's check out this page. And let's get started. And let's enable GuardDuty. Okay, let's proceed to step 2. First, let's reissue the check. Great, this validation passed. Let's read through this lab step, then we'll browse around the GuardDuty interface a bit. Amazon GuardDuty analyzes its data sources to find potential security threats. You can influence the security findings that GuardDuty reports through trusted IP lists and threat lists. Trusted IP lists whitelist IP addresses from being included in GuardDuty's findings to reduce false positives. Threat lists include known malicious IP addresses. GuardDuty reports additional findings for IP addresses in threat lists. You will activate a threat list that includes the IP address of an EC2 instance that is part of the Cloud Academy lab environment. The environment consists of 2 EC2 instances in different VPCs. The instances are configured to communicate with each other. You will see the findings GuardDuty discovers regarding communicating with malicious instances in a later lab step. Instructions: open the EC2 console to view the instances in the lab environment. There are 2 EC2 instances to focus on for this lab step: malicious instance and app server. You may also see another instance, but it is not important for this lab step. Select malicious instance and copy its IPv4 public IP. The public IP address is what is needed for GuardDuty's threat list. DNS names and private IP addresses are ignored in threat lists. Save the IP address in a plain text file named threatlist.txt. GuardDuty requires a file on Amazon S3 to create a threat list. As an example, on Windows, you could use a notepad and the file contents would look similar to the following. Similarly, you could use TextEdit on Mac OS. Open the Amazon S3 console. The Cloud Academy Lab environment has created a bucket for you to upload the threat list. Click on the bucket containing threat list in the name. Click Upload to open the S3 upload wizard. Click Add Files and select the threat list.txt file you created earlier. Click Upload in the lower right corner to upload the file with the default S3 file configuration. Click threatlist.txt to open its details in a new tab and copy the object URL in the Object Overview panel. Return to the GuardDuty console and select Lists in the left sidebar. Note, you may already see some findings in the GuardDuty console. GuardDuty does not require a threat list to make findings. It will only report additional findings for IP addresses in the threat list. Click Add a Threat IP List to create a threat IP list. In the Add a Threat IP List form, enter the following values and click Add List. List name Lab. Location, paste in the S3 link you copied a few instructions ago. Format plain text. Notice that the drop-down lists other formats that can be used if you have existing threat intelligence services to import threat lists from. I agree, checked. A success confirmation appears. Check the Active checkbox to activate the threat list. The small threat list you uploaded is active in seconds, but it can take 15 minutes or more for GuardDuty to report new findings related to the threat list. You will view sample GuardDuty findings in the next lab step while waiting for the new findings to appear. Summary: in this lab step, you have activated a threat list in GuardDuty. You began by listing IP addresses in a file. Then you uploaded the file to S3 and created a threat list in GuardDuty. Lastly, you activated the threat list. No new findings related to the threat list will be made unless the threat list is active. So we don't have validation checks officially here, but let's do this lab step hands-on. Scroll to the top. Okay, let's get the malicious instance IPv4 public IP and put it in the text editor to upload it in mentioned S3 bucket. And then activate this threat list. So we don't have EC2s bookmarked as far as I see. Let's do that. Let's go immediately to instances from here. And let's copy malicious instances public IPv4 address. Can do that from here. So my recording software currently records only the web browser. In the background, I'll save this public IPv4 address in text editor, and let's call that file threatlist.txt. And then let's upload that threat list to S3. let's add files. And upload. We have upload succeeded. Let's close this out and let's select this thread list and copy URL. So object URL copied, and let's put that in our text editor. And then let's go back to GuardDuty. We still don't have any findings reported, but let's go through these sections in the left sidebar. So through summary, findings, EC2 malware scans, protection plan, S3 protection, EKS protection, extended threat detection, runtime monitoring, malware protection for EC2, malware protection for S3, RDS protection, Lambda protection, accounts, usage, settings, lists. And let's add our custom threat IP list. So the name for this list will be lab. Location is the one from our text editor. And format is plain text. We have here other formats available, but for us, we'll use plain text and agree. Add list. We currently see its status is inactive, so let's activate it. Now it's active. And let's switch back to the summary. So still no reported findings. Let's continue to step 4, examining sample GuardDuty findings. In the meantime, hopefully something will be reported before our lab environment expires in 30 minutes. Introduction. To learn about the types of threats that GuardDuty can find, you will generate sample findings in this lab step. The findings are simulated but allow you to view details and illustrate the 3 different severity levels in GuardDuty: high, medium, and low. In addition to the sample findings, you can find descriptions of what each finding relates to in the GuardDuty documentation. Instructions. Click on Settings in the GuardDuty console sidebar. You can ignore any error that appears regarding not being authorized to perform IAM requests. Scroll down to the Sample Findings section and click on Generate Sample Findings. After a few seconds, a success banner appears. Click on Findings in the GuardDuty sidebar. Notice the table is full of various findings that begin with angle brackets sample. Notice the table is full of various findings that begins with square brackets sample. Read through the different sample findings to see what kind of threats GuardDuty can identify. Select a few findings and inspect the details panel that appears. The details are divided into several sections: summary, resource affected, action, actor, and additional information. Summary. In this lab step, you generated and examined sample GuardDuty findings. Although this lab focuses on EC2 threats, you have also seen in the sample findings that GuardDuty can also identify IAM threats by using CloudTrail logs. This lab step also does not have any validation checks in place. So let's proceed to do this lab step hands-on and generate sample findings. So if we refresh the page, okay, we have here one finding reported, but let's continue with sample findings. So in the settings section, let's generate sample findings. Let's see now summary page. If you refresh it, okay, now we see we have more findings. Let's see in detail in the findings section. Yes, now majority looks like it's coming from the generated samples. And let's see, we have title column, severity, finding type, coming from resource, what's the count, account ID, and last seen. So let's sort them according to severity. Critical, we have two sample critical ones. One is coming from attack sequence IAM compromised credentials, and another attack sequence is S3 compromised data. Let's check those out. For the second one, okay, let's proceed with this lab. Step 5, examining live threats in GuardDuty. The EC2 instances in the Cloud Academy lab environment have been communicating with each other since you enabled GuardDuty. The findings related to the instances should appear within 15 minutes. You can read through this lab step without waiting if you prefer. The lab step explains the findings that would eventually appear. If you do wait and no findings are present after 15 minutes, ensure the threat IP list is active. The way the two instances communicate with each other is as follows. The app server instance simply makes HTTP requests to the malicious instance every 15 seconds. The malicious instance sends SSH connection attempts to the app server instance every 4 seconds. The connection request does not include an SSH key, causing the request to always be refused. The signatures of each of these communication types are recognized by GuardDuty as findings. We will investigate the findings in this lab step. Click on Findings in the GuardDuty console's sidebar. Depending on how quickly you arrived at this lab step, you may see the following finding type row: Unauthorized access EC2 malicious IP caller custom. You can identify it as a real finding because it does not begin with squared bracket sample. Click on the Unauthorized Access EC2 Malicious IP Caller Custom finding with a yellow square, medium severity. This finding indicates outbound TCP communication with an IP address in one of your GuardDuty threat lists. The threat list name field tells you which list. The medium severity rating is used because it is recommended that you investigate the affected instance at your earliest convenience. Scroll down the finding details to discover all the details included to help you understand the threat. For example, in the Resource Affected section, you can see if the involved instance, the app server in this case, was in the role of the target or the actor and which port was involved. The GuardDuty uses VPC flow logs to make the finding. In previous iterations of GuardDuty, a separate SSH brute force finding was also reported, but it is not treated separately any longer. Additional potential findings. The following findings are not expected to be included in your lab's GuardDuty findings, but have been observed when leaving instances open to the internet for extended periods of time or if an instance is compromised. They can give you additional perspective on what GuardDuty can find. Unauthorized access EC2 SSH brute force low severity. The EC2 SSH brute force finding indicates an instance was involved in a brute force attack aimed at gaining SSH access using passwords or access keys. In the above image, you can see the description states that an instance is the target of an attack from an IP address. GuardDuty uses VPC flow logs to make this finding. The finding is classified as low severity, meaning that it does not require immediate attention, but is something to address in the future, perhaps by blocking traffic from that IP in your VPC and only allowing SSH access through keys. You can see location of the attacker's IP address in the actor section of the finding details. Note, SSH findings are only reported if SSH is configured on the default port of 22. Unauthorized access EC2 SSH brute force high severity. This finding is prompted by the same activity as the previous finding. However, this finding is identifying one of your instances as an actor, whereas the low severity finding was identifying one of your instances as a victim. This finding receives a high severity rating because it is likely that the instance has been compromised and is performing unauthorized activities. Immediate action is recommended, for example, terminating the instance or isolating it from external access to perform forensic analysis on the instance to discover the root cause. Recon EC2 port probe unprotected port, low severity. This finding notifies you that an open port on one of your instances has been probed by known scanners on the internet. The finding is low risk, but you are advised to restrict access to known instances by configuring security groups, access control lists, or host firewalls. The actor section tells you where the probe originated from. Summary. In this lab step, you examined a real EC2 threat finding for the lab environment. You understood the signatures for each finding and actions that can be taken to remedy each. It is worth noting that GuardDuty findings are event sources in Event Bridge. By using Event Bridge, it is possible to automatically react to GuardDuty findings. Let's go through this lab step hands-on. We have 17 minutes left in this lab instance. So for this lab step, let's check out these finding types. Unauthorized access, EC2 malicious IP caller custom. First, let's copy this finding type and see and copy it in GuardDuty findings. Let's filter it. Finding type equals, so let's try to paste it as is. See, looks it's recognized. Yeah, and it's currently recognized one sample and one coming from our threat list, looks like. Let's verify that. It mentioned custom threat list lab. Then this is overview, resource affected, instance details, instance profile, instance tags, network interface, IP addresses, security groups, action, who was the actor, location, organization, additional information, evidence, threat intelligence details, threat list is a lab, threat names, it's coming from customer threat intel. Okay, next one from this lab step. Let's see if we can find this one. SSH brute force. We have one coming from generated sample findings. Let's see how this sample overview pane looks. this looks the same, but let's verify that. Yep, still the same one, only the low severity one is currently available. So let's move to this Recon EC2 port probe unprotected port. We have 12 minutes left in this lab instance. So we have no matches here. Okay, let's proceed to the last step, disabling Amazon GuardDuty. And before we officially end this lab, we'll refresh the page to see if anything is reported in the meantime. Amazon GuardDuty incurs costs for analyzing the variety of data sources that it monitors. If you no longer need the proactive threat detection provided by GuardDuty, you can either suspend or disable it to stop accumulating costs. If you disable GuardDuty, any findings that were discovered by GuardDuty will be lost. In practice, you are encouraged to back up any findings that you want to preserve before disabling GuardDuty. In this lab step, you will disable GuardDuty because you will not need to preserve any findings or activate GuardDuty later. Instructions in the GuardDuty console, click on Settings in the left sidebar. Under Disable GuardDuty, click on Disable, click Disable in the confirmation dialog, and you are presented with the GuardDuty welcome page when the operation is complete. Summary: in this lab step, you disabled GuardDuty to stop accumulating threat analysis costs and to remove any trace of previous findings. So let's test out this validation check. It failed as expected, so we have 10 minutes left in this lab. Let's refresh this page here to see if this finding type will now be reported. Still no. Let's give it a couple of more minutes and refresh the page once again, then proceed to disable GuardDuty and wrap up with this lab. So we don't have this finding reported, and let's proceed to disable GuardDuty and reissue the validation check. Great, all validations passed, and that would be all for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this one. Until next video, bye for now.